In this video, I'm going to give you some graphing calculator tips on how to solve a system of equations. To do this, you're going to need to know how to graph in the graphing calculator. We are specifically going to look at a system of linear equations, which means that the equations produce a graph that makes a line, a straight line. This will theoretically work with any system of equations, though, not just linear. Let's look at our problem here. You'll notice that here in the middle I have all this writing. These are the steps to doing it. So if you already watched this video and want to pause it, go ahead and pause it here. So we're going to go ahead and jump right into this problem. Before we jump in, we need to know the three types of solving a system. So it's elimination, substitution, and graphing. Elimination is best to use when they're both in standard form, which look like this: ax plus by equals c, so the x and y term on the same side. Substitution is best when you have one of the equations already solved for a variable, so maybe y equals something or x equals something. Graphing is best when both are in function form, which means it's solved for y, both are solved for y. And the reason it's best in function form is because your graphing calculator will graph in function form, and that's the only way it graphs. So looking at this problem, if we were doing this by hand, these are both in standard form, so we would be best served to try elimination. But we want to do this in our calculator. So to do it in our calculator, we just said we have to have them both in function form, which means solve for y. So I'm going to solve both of these for y. So let's go ahead and solve these for y, in case you don't know how to do that. The first one is a little tricky because you're going to need some fractions. But to get y by itself, I need to subtract this 2x from both sides. And we're going to get 4y equals, because these cancel out, negative 2x plus 22. I like writing my x term out first. And then we're going to divide all of the terms by 4 because that 4 is multiplying the y. So now you're going to have y equals negative 2/4 x plus 22/4. Now if you stopped here and you're doing it in the calculator, this would be fine. These are not simplified fractions though, so really I want to simplify them. Negative 2/4 is the same as negative 1/2. And then 22/4 is the same as, I can divide both top and bottom, the numerator and denominator, by 2, so that would give me 11/2. So that's one of my equations. And I still have to do, solve the other one for y to put it in function form so I can graph it. It's actually pretty easy though. We're just adding 7x to this y, so I just subtract 7x from both sides. So I have y equals, because these cancel out. And I want to write the negative 7x out front, and then I have a positive 12. So I'd have y equals negative 7x plus 12. So there's our two equations. And if we go back to this other page, that's what I have written right here. Okay. So the first thing we need to do is go ahead and graph that in our graphing calculator. So we need to graph both of them. So turn it on, go to y equals, and let's graph this one first. If I were you, I highly recommend that when you type in fractions, you put them in parentheses as division problems. So I put parentheses, use the negative key, do not use the minus key. Negative 1 divided by 2, that's our fraction. Close parenthesis, because that's the end of our fraction, x plus, and then parenthesis, 11 divided by 2. So it looks like that. And we're going to type in our second one, so it's going to be negative 7x plus 12, negative 7x plus 12. And then we're going to go ahead and graph this. So we're going to click either Zoom 6 or just click graph, and it'll graph it looking something like this. So that's the first line, that's the second line. So you can click either Zoom 6 or for Zoom Standard or Zoom Fit if Zoom 6 didn't work. But the way that you know it works is you can see their intersection. So right here is going to be the answer to a system of equations. To solve a system of equations by graphing, you got to find their intersection. There is actually another way to solve systems of equations in the graphing calculator, but it involves some linear algebra that we currently don't have the skills to do. So we're not going to do that way. We're just going to continue with the graphing way. So we need to find this intersection. And if you watch my other video on finding zeros, you know that to find zeros you went to second trace or the calculate feature. If you go to that same thing, second trace, and you're in the calculate window, to find the intersection, which is the answer to a system by graphing, we want to use number 5. So we're going to click 5. And we're going to say, where does it look like they intersect on the first curve? And the first curve just means the first line. So I have my little spider cursor right here, and I'm going to put it, I'm going to move it left and right to go about where they intersect, which is like pretty close to there. It doesn't have to be perfect. Click enter. On the second curve, now you're moving around on the second line. So I want to move the spider cursor to be pretty close to that. It looks like about right here is the closest. Click enter. That says take a guess. You can really just click enter here and it'll work, but that's probably pretty close right there. Click enter again. There's the answer. The answer is going to be 1, 5, which is answer choice C. So again, to do this, you have to set them both equal to y to put them in the calculator, because the calculator only graphs in function form. Put it in y equals. Make sure both of these equal signs are kind of like highlighted, which means it's going to graph both. You're going to click graph or zoom 6 or zoom 0 for zoom fit. Then you go to second, trace to go to calculate, and the answer is going to be where they intersect, so you need to know that. And they intersect button is 5. And really, you can line it up by just taking guesses on the curves, but almost every single time you can just click enter 3 times and it's going to work. That's why I wrote enter 3 times down here. 1, 5. So hopefully you can use this to figure out the solution to a system of equations. You can go ahead and try some of these. Hope this was helpful.